Hello, and welcome back to the Marketing for Learning podcast. It's Hannah here with you today, and this week I want to give you all a quick tip, a word of advice, one really small thing you can do that will make your learning communications a lot better. And I promise you, this one actually is a quick tip. Often when we hear this in marketing, quick tip, and it would take you 6 months. But all I want you to do is think a little bit about the words you're using when you're communicating with your audience. Typically, when our clients come to us here at MAS, they come to us with a need for a particular program or topic. So people will come to us and say, hey, Han, Ash, can you help me on our generative AI project or our leadership project or our capability planning project? And of course, we say absolutely yes, and we have that conversation. But then typically what happens is those words that your internal project is called is what ends up in your marketing and your communication. And I don't think that always makes sense to our target audience. And I want to use the example here of capability planning. To us in L&D, capability planning makes complete sense. We know exactly what it is. We know it's about making sure that the organisation has the right skills for the future and that we're planning ahead for that. We're making sure that that aligns. So typically, capability planning initiatives have quite a lot of content and learning interventions within them. But what does capability planning mean to Joe Bloggs that works in your organisation, that isn't thinking about learning? He's not wrapped up in the world of L&D like we are. He's not thinking about it. He's just getting on with his day job. Well, it probably means one of two things to him. The first, it's a business initiative that he don't care about. He don't care if the business has the right skills for the next 5, 10, 15 years, however long you're looking at. He literally couldn't care less. Or the second, he hasn't got a clue what it means. He doesn't know. So if we're going out to our people and saying, get involved in our new capability planning program, or get involved in our capability planning initiative, we'll be losing them at the first hurdle. Even if we say, develop the skills of the future, get involved with capability planning now, the capability planning word, or phrase rather, is likely to confuse them. And a confused audience are not going to engage with us. So I think we would do a really good job in L&D to start thinking about essentially our product names. What does the product name mean to our audience? Does it make sense to our audience? Will it make them want to get involved? Because like we just said, even if somebody did know what capability planning is, that's a business initiative. It's nothing to do with me. I don't work in learning. Or I might not be a leader. I'm not interested. I don't care. But then if we flip it on its head and we think about what the audience are actually getting from it, they are getting the skills of the future. They are being career ready, future proofed. They are ready for their next challenge. They're developing their CV, whether that's to help them grow at your organisation or another. There's actually a lot that they get from that. But we need to make that abundantly clear to them. This concept of thinking about the terminology we use to speak to our customers and present our offering to customers is something called voice of customer in marketing. And us marketers, we use this in our advertising, in our communications, in our product naming. We use it everywhere. Organisations that have the time and budget will spend a lot of time looking into what kind of words and phrases do our audience use. For example, if I was an external brand and I was getting a lot of tweets in, shows how long ago that I worked for an in-house vendor, I'd look at those tweets and see what kind of phrases people were using. Is there confusion around our product offering? Are they asking for something that we have got, but they're using a different way to say it? And then I would echo that back to them. Not only does that mean it's easier for them in terms of the process and the understanding, they can go to your website and find what they want, but it also creates a sense of relatability and trust between you and your audience. You know what they want, they can answer you in a really normal human way, and they trust you because you're a normal human being. You're not being pretentious, you're not going over the top and coming up with really witty words and names. You're just speaking like a human. So not only does it actually aid the user experience, it does a really good job at building trust and relatability between you and your audience. And imagine if we did that in our L&D teams. Imagine if we looked at the kind of things people were coming to us and saying, the way they phrased particular learning modules that we have got that you do send to them, but they've not used the word, they've not used the title of that learning module. What about if we looked at the searches that were made on our LMS or our learning platforms? What would that tell us? What words are they using to try to find the relevant content? And how can we echo that back to them? Of course, with a lot of our learning content, it is quite obvious. Data protection makes sense. GDPR. Nobody in Europe could avoid hearing about GDPR when it came out, so we all know what it stands for. I don't know what it stands for anymore, but I know it's about data protection. Things like generative AI. Okay, a lot of people would just think of ChatGPT, but they know what the topic's about. So I'm not saying you have to go through and completely rename your entire learning library. But I think when it is a topic that would cause confusion, that doesn't make sense to somebody who isn't in L&D, we need to think about how we're presenting it to them. And this is exactly what myself and Ashley mean when we're saying marketing shouldn't be an afterthought. And marketing should be involved the entire way through the process. Marketing does not just equal advertising. It's not just putting out some really cool banners and maybe some videos and compelling adverts. It's actually about relating to the customer and making sure that the product fit works for the customer. If you go back and listen to our 4 Ps of Marketing podcast, product is in there. You should be getting your marketing experts involved up front. And if you don't have marketing experts, you've got to be putting on your marketing hat. You can't outmarket a bad learning experience. I've said that many times on this podcast. But also, is the learning experience actually bad? Or are we just presenting the product in the complete wrong way for our audience? So I hope this short, snappy episode has given you some food for thought about how we're speaking to our audiences and the phrases and the terminology we're using when we're speaking to them. This podcast did come off the back of a conversation I had with a client just a couple of weeks ago. And it was about capability planning. And the client does listen, so if you're listening, guys, hiya! But it is something that's overlooked quite often in learning and development circles. We get quite caught up in the world we live in. We know what all these things mean, and we kind of end up assuming that everybody else does as well. So if you're struggling with solidifying a message, making a message really clear, making sure that what's in it for me is really clear, make sure you're also considering the product name. As always, if you've got any questions about this podcast or the topic I've discussed today, please do get in touch. I absolutely love hearing from you guys. But if not, we will see you next week on the next episode of the Marketing for Learning podcast. See you later, guys.